Hello and welcome to the Solo Legion Show. My name is Ryan C. Banks. I am the owner of Prolific.Entertainment and the creator of a new team of superheroes called Solo Legion. Today's video is at the request of a young man named Brent. Brent asked if I would make a video about creating new superheroes. He's actually developing his own superheroes and he asked me if I would give him some pointers. Okay, so I think there's probably more of you out there who want to create original superheroes, and I think the market is open for as many heroes as we can possibly get in it. And I just want to give you some pointers. Hopefully what I've done helps you and maybe gives you some things you can add to your hero to make them more complete so you can be successful. Okay, so the first thing that I do when I create a superhero is I research the science behind that superhero's abilities. For instance, if I'm making a metal hero, I research aluminum or titanium or iron, such as what I did with metallic. If I'm creating a hero such as Plastic the Drastic, I research plastic. What temperature does plastic melt at? Are there plastics that are heat resistant? What temperature does plastic freeze at? Are there plastics that are more resistant to sub-zero temperatures? Okay. Just always want to make sure that you find a way to ground your hero's abilities in something scientific that people can relate to. Okay, so you want your hero to be relatable. Okay, the second thing is backstory. So when I think of creating a superhero, I'm thinking, what's their backstory as far back as I can write it? So sometimes that means starting with the hero prior to them being born, such as in the case of Silver Knight. If you listen to the previous set of videos, I explained the backstories of the heroes. In Silver Knight's case, he was exposed to a special silver beam that his father created, and he was exposed to that beam when his mother was pregnant. That beam is what gave him his ability to split into multiple versions of himself. So in researching the silver, I discovered some things that were pretty interesting to me, and I created this story of the silver beam. So his backstory starts prior to his birth, and then it goes up through his childhood when he has flashes of this being able to split into multiple versions of himself to save himself from danger. So you can start back that far and then just build it all the way up to the present time. So you always want to start as far back as possible. Then you've got weapons. Number 3 on my list is weapons. So I always think a hero is more interesting when they have weapons to use to fight with. So you want to think, okay, what is an original weapon that I can create? Or how is an original way that I can use a previously created weapon such as a sword, or such as a spear, or such as a bow and arrow? What is something original that I can do with a sword, a spear, a bow and arrow, or a gun, or a laser, or something, a boomerang? What is something original that I can do with that weapon that no one else has done? Now, obviously, if you're creating a hero that's got manufactured lasers out of their body, or they manufacture flames or ice or whatever, then you don't necessarily need an external weapon because their weapon is what they are projecting from an internal source. However, always make sure that your hero has some sort of weapon, preferably some sort of projectile or something, because you got to think the hero is fighting against cyborgs, robots, giants. He's fighting against maybe a host of an army, giant insects, whatever that hero's coming up against. Give them an interesting weapon, give them a way of fighting so they're not just punching and kicking. Okay. One of the things I get bored with is heroes that just punch and kick. Because when you're going up against machine guns, lasers, swords, punching and kicking is not going to get the job done. So try to find a way to give them an interesting weapon, an interesting power that they can project at the enemy so they can hit them, you know, short distance, long distance. That's always an interesting way to do it. The next thing would be transportation. So you've got to think, how does this hero get from point A to point Z? And what I found in a lot of heroes that I researched, heroes that I liked growing up, is they didn't always have an interesting way from getting to point A to point Z, getting from where they're at to where the person's in danger. So one of the most interesting ways of getting around to me is Spider-Man. swinging from webs. We have a lot of superheroes that fly. You have superheroes that have vehicles such as Batman. But Spider-Man gets around in the most unique way, to me, of any superhero ever. I think that's one thing that makes him stand out. Swinging on webs, flipping through the air is an amazing way. So that is his transportation. Okay, so figure out a way that your hero can get from point A to point Z in a unique way. If you have to make a vehicle such as a car or motorcycle, maybe give that car or motorcycle a unique look or unique features. Okay. The fifth thing would be fighting style. So try to give your hero a unique fighting style. I love mixed martial arts. So I like studying different fighting styles, kung fu, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, all different kinds of fighting styles. So what I tried to do with Soul Legion is give them each a different way that they fight, a different training, a different style, so that they don't all look the same. They're not all just punching and kicking. Okay, so try to give your hero a unique fighting style, a unique fighting stance, such as with Amphibian. He tends to fight from low to the ground and fight up because he is amphibious. He kind of mimics the movements of a frog. So frogs are low to the ground, so he stays low to the ground and projects himself up. So that's one of the ways that I made his fighting style unique. Okay, the next thing would be the hero's family members. So try to give your hero a sense of family. Okay, what are his parents like? Are his parents still alive? Does he have brothers, sisters? Does he have a cousin? What is his situation? Is he an only child? Does he have a grandmother? Does he have an uncle? Does he have an aunt? So try to surround this hero with family members that make them more relatable and show kind of the conflicts that they may have in hiding their secret identity from their family members. That always makes it more interesting. Okay. Seventh on my list is love interest. So what is the love interest of this hero? Okay. This hero is going to be a lot like you in a lot of ways. They're going to want a boyfriend or girlfriend. They're going to want someone to love them back. That's a human need. So you've got to figure out, how do I incorporate the love interest of this character into their story? Okay. With Spider-Man, you have Mary Jane. That's been an ongoing story that's kept him grounded in the reality that, hey, he has issues with his love life just like we do. So try to ground your hero in a love interest as well as his familial relationships. Okay. We also have the miscellaneous relationships. So you're going to have his employer. You're going to have the postman. You're going to have people he encounters at the bank. You're going to have all these different people that your hero encounters in their daily life that he forms relationships with over time. So try to make those relationships interesting. With Batman, you have the butler. You have various different people that many heroes form relationships with that are outside of their family, outside of their friends, and outside of their love interests. Okay, so give your hero a sense of being grounded in a community. You've got the police officer, you've got the fireman, you've got the police chief, you've got the investor that the hero may deal with. So try to give them interesting relationships outside of their family and love interests. Okay, number 9 on my list is, what trauma has your hero been through? And is that trauma the motivation for them becoming a hero? So you've got to look back and say, was that trauma in their childhood? Was that trauma in their teenage years? Was that trauma something that happened to them in college? Or did they have a peaceful life until they were an adult? And was that trauma in their adulthood? So it's always better to have a catalyst in the form of some trauma that made that hero want to be a hero to prevent trauma occurring in other people's life. And what you'll find is, during the hard times when that hero wants to give up, they always are motivated by that trauma. In Batman's case, it's his parents dying in front of him. In Spider-Man's case, it's Uncle Ben. Okay? So you always want to have a traumatic event that encouraged that hero to be willing to risk their life for other people. Okay? The other thing is their costume. So you've got to design an interesting costume. And what I try to do is make the costume interesting, give it typically 2 to 3 colors in the color palette. Don't go overboard with that unless you need to. Like in the case of Laser, I added multiple colors to his costume because each of his colors represents a different power of light that he uses. But in a lot of my characters, I try to go with a 2-tone, 3-tone. So you've got to think about when I create this character, I'm creating this character to be animated. I'm creating this character to potentially be in movies. I'm creating this character to be in video games. I'm creating this character to be drawn in posters, in comic books. So how hard is it going to be for my artist or for the CGI creators to reproduce this character over and over and over at every angle? How hard is it going to be for them to reproduce it? So try to design your costume in such a way that when you have to budget out your animation and when you have to turn it over to an artist to reproduce, it's able to be reproduced at a fairly reasonable rate. Okay, so think about your artist when you're creating your costume. Make your costume interesting, but make it simple enough to be reproduced over thousands and thousands and thousands of pages, thousands and thousands of illustrations. Try to make it as true to representing that character's powers, but don't go overboard with a bunch of folds and a bunch of pockets and a bunch of extra stuff that's got to be drawn at every angle in every frame. Okay? The other thing we want to look at is we want to look at the hero's personality. So often we see a hero has a civilian personality and then they have their hero personality. So what I try to do is say, okay, if the hero is like this in real life, okay, their alter ego of the superhero is going to probably be close to the opposite of what their civilian character would be. So if they're fairly shy as a civilian, maybe they're over the top as a superhero when they can cut loose. If they're wild as a civilian, maybe they're more subdued as a superhero. So you want to create their hero persona, and then you want to create their superhero persona. I'm sorry, you want to create their civilian persona and then their superhero persona. So you want those two things to be as opposite as possible. It makes it harder for the people around them to figure out who they are. So the other thing you want to look at is what is the logo that your hero has. So you see, I'll go back to Spider-Man. In his case, he's got a spider. That is his logo. So you want to think about what makes your hero stand out. When you start selling merchandise, is your hero going to have a logo where when they see that logo, they think about that hero? You have Iron Man's mask. When you see that mask, you think about Iron Man. So you want to make sure that you give them an interesting logo. Once again, don't make it too complicated. Make it fairly simple, but make it true to what that character does, what their color palette is. What does that logo say about them? Does it encapsulate who they are as a hero and what they stand for? Okay. You also want to look at the strengths and weaknesses of your hero. So you don't want your hero to be overpowered. Okay. Your hero needs to have struggles. They need to have strengths that you can believe in. They also need to have weaknesses so that they're not overpowered. The more overpowered your hero, the harder it is to write a story that's relatable. Okay. Because if you make your hero too strong, too powerful, too fast, in some cases too smart, then it's even harder to make a villain that will challenge them. And people will think this hero is never really in danger because they've always got a way of escape. They've always got a way out. They're basically invincible. So you want to give your hero obvious strengths and give them obvious weaknesses. Okay. The other thing that I like to do is I have a list of about 10 different scenarios that I put each hero in. And I have to make sure that in this scenario, my hero is able to save people. So if I find there's a scenario in which my hero would not be able to save people, I go back and add something to that hero. So for instance, let's say there's a hero who is a very up close and personal hero. He fights up close and personal. But something is happening in the distance and there's not enough time for him to cover that distance. Well, if that hero had a projectile or a way of teleporting, then that hero could not just take care of things that are up close and personal, but they could also affect things in the distance. So you want to make sure that your hero can meet many different scenarios, and that way of doing that is built into the hero's weapons or abilities. Okay, let's say that hero is fighting multiple people at one time. Well, if that hero is designed to really just be a one-on-one fighter, well, what happens when they're surrounded by 10 cyborgs? How does that hero deal with 10 cyborgs? How does that hero deal with one giant ice monster? How does that hero deal with dragons that are flying down, torching the city? How does that hero deal with all these different kind of scenarios? So think about all those different things, create your own list of 10 potential scenarios, and make sure your hero could win in that scenario. Doesn't have to win up front immediately, but over the course of the battle, they're equipped to defeat the enemy or save the day in multiple scenarios. Okay? Another thing is, does your hero have a dynamic pose? Okay, so if someone took a silhouette of your hero, a freeze frame, would your hero have a dynamic pose that is their signature pose? Okay, so think about that. Think about how your hero moves. Think about, as you are designing their fighting style, their walking style, their costume, what's a pose that you would freeze them in that people would know from the silhouette, this is this particular hero. Okay, so think about that. Also, what is your hero's core belief system? So you have some heroes who are driven by defending the innocent. You have some people who are driven by, like Robin Hood, taking money from the rich. Okay. You have some heroes who have a core belief system on defending the poor, and they specifically are geared towards defending the poor. There's many different types of core beliefs. Bottom line, every hero's core belief should be that human beings have intrinsic worth and that they are worth risking your life for. But then there are other beliefs that surround that. So give your hero a core belief that is their motivation, that makes them unique. What is an experience that they had that makes them want to defend certain people in certain scenarios particularly? Okay, so the last thing is the ability to operate individually or as a team player. So one thing I've seen in, different superheroes is some superheroes don't seem to fit into a team concept very well, or in other cases, they are only good to be in a team concept because they're so limited. Okay. And what I try to do is make it to where my heroes are great team players. They're also great individual heroes. So they fit cohesively inside a solo legion, but they also are able to go out on their own, save the day, overcome the odds by themselves. And that's actually where the name Solo Legion comes from. Each hero is their own solo hero. When they need to go on a solo mission with the odds against them, they are equipped to do that. But they are also part of a legion of heroes. Okay. And I got that legion from, I used to read a lot on the Roman legions and how they formed their different formations in battle. And I really have always liked the name Legion for a group. Okay. So we've got solo and we've got legion, and within solo legion, we've got individual heroes that can fight individually. They can also fight collectively as a cohesive unit. So that is my list of many things that I go through to create each hero. So I hope that helped you out. I hope you go on to create the next great hero, the next great team of heroes. And if you guys want to send in some messages, you can always send in messages. You can always send in questions, and I'll be doing future videos just like this, where it's questions and answers. Sometimes I'll take one question and do the whole video on that one question. Other times I'll take multiple questions that I can bullet point, that I can answer, maybe 5 in one video. And in this case, I knew I couldn't answer more than this one because there's so much to creating a superhero. So hopefully that helped you guys out. I appreciate you watching, appreciate you subscribing, appreciate you referring this channel to other people. And just remember, the world is a better place when we all choose to be a hero. Thanks a lot.